Good morning, friends. Lay down boats. Today's talk is on the Saddhammapatirupaka Sutta, a sutta on where the Buddha talks about to Kassapa, Mahakassapa, one of the senior monks, about the importance of maintaining an authentic Dhamma and how a counterfeit Dhamma can and does arise and ultimately can obscure an authentic Dhamma. And the sutta kind of goes against the common refrain of people that like to reconcile everything into one homogeneous soup, that the truth does not need a defense. The Buddha spent nearly as much time defending his Dhamma as he did proclaiming exactly what it was. And he did this in a very skillful and useful way. He didn't take indignant stance against what other people were saying, but he did continually point out the differences between what he was teaching and what others were teaching, or what an individual might have developed within their own mind. It's so important that he did that continually. But most importantly, he invited anyone who was interested, and maybe the better word is he instructed anyone that was interested that this is to be experienced, that you had to come and see for yourself ehipisiko. And that is one of the question comes up often, and it's been it came up a couple of weeks ago. Just the idea of the Buddha's teachings, the Dhamma, being just another dogmatic discipline or a dogmatic religion. And the Buddha was concerned about that too, and that people would see it as just another dogmatic religion that he encountered and rejected during his time. But again, the dogma means taking an authoritative stance or espousing an authoritative doctrine that in itself has no foundation. Of course, the experiential nature of the Eightfold Path is its foundation. And it's not a foundation that we take on faith, because that really is no foundation, is it? It's a foundation that we develop within ourselves based on the framework of a Buddha's and awakened human beings teaching. And that framework is the Eightfold Path. Again, so the authority is established in the usefulness of the Dhamma, but it's expressed and holds a foundation in the experiential nature of developing our own understanding. Nothing is taken on faith, and so that being so, the truth does. An authentic Dhamma does need a defense, but the defense is within the Dhamma itself, within the experience. Again, it doesn't. It's an aspect of teaching an authentic Dhamma. Or what I should say is that any teacher who hopes to teach an authentic Dhamma must have actually studied the Dhamma and left behind any adaptations, accommodations, or embellishments to that Dhamma if they're going to be authentic to it. Now, of course, what has happened in almost every instance, especially today, is that teachers have incorporated other things that they have associated with themselves, whether it's modern Buddhism, as it's developed, or even the marrying modern Buddhism, one step removed at least from what the Buddha taught, to modern psychological practices, and then introducing those types of theories. And so in many cases, what is called Buddhism today has more akin with two things. It has more akin with the Vedas and the Upanishads, which become modern Hinduism. And it's represented often as psychological treatment with the associations to psychological theory. I'm not putting that down, except it is something different. So the defense of the Dhamma is to remain pure to the Dhamma, and that's what the Buddha teaches to Kassapa in this very interesting but short sutta. The Buddha was at Savatthi, at Jita's grove, Anathapindika's monastery. The venerable Mahakassapa went to the Buddha. He bowed down to him and sat to one side. After a short time, Kassapa inquired of the Buddha. In the past, there were less training rules, yet more disciples established within themselves, who had established within themselves arahantship, meaning they had awakened. Now there are more rules of training, yet fewer disciples establish arahantship within themselves. The Buddha responds, Kassapa, when human beings degenerate, a counterfeit Dhamma arises, and the authentic Dhamma is diminished and begins to disappear. Now, he's talking in general in the world. The Buddha is talking in general in the world, but most specifically within the Sangha, because it is within a well-focused Sangha that the Dhamma is preserved. And you could say that it is in a well-focused Dhamma, a well-focused Sangha, that the Dhamma is defended, and it's defended by practitioners who are actually developing what the Buddha taught and avoiding getting into and introducing counterfeit dharmas within the authenticity of the Buddha's Dhamma. The Buddha continues, when the authentic Dhamma is diminished and begins to disappear, there must be more training rules, even though fewer disciples will be able to establish arahantship within themselves. It kind of makes sense when we start taking license with anything. But now, we'll keep it focused on within the Dhamma. When we start taking license with what the Buddha taught, which was designed to keep us well focused, and using the simple framework of the Eightfold Path to guide us, as we start taking liberties and start diminishing by ignoring either parts of the Eightfold Path or completely dismissing the Eightfold Path in favor of some other practice, such as the Bodhisattva path, or mind only, or just meditation practice. The Buddha taught neither one of those as a path to awakening. When we start introducing even minor aspects of that, forget about the modern Buddhism that seems to incorporate every single spiritual concept within itself and psychological concepts. When we start doing that, we start diminishing the Dhamma itself. And so the Dhamma itself remains pure, but it becomes corrupted when we adapt it or accommodate it or diminish it in any way. This is what the Buddha is talking about. This is now becoming a counterfeit Dhamma. The Buddha continues. The authentic Dhamma will not be diminished or begin to disappear when there is no counterfeit Dhamma arisen in the world. So again, it makes sense within the Sangha and without the Sangha, outside of the Sangha, the Dhamma would not be affected except by people insisting that it be different than it is and incorporating different things. This is exactly what happened, began to happen during the first Buddhist council, but they were able to maintain the integrity of the Dhamma. By the second Buddhist council, there were so many people, practitioners even, that were still in that first Sangha that wanted it to be different than it is. And the Mahasanghikas were one sect that wanted to introduce a more mystical and visionary type of Dhamma that had more in common with the Vedas and the Upanishads than it did with the actual teachings of the Buddha. But they were so influenced by that and so enamored with the ideologies that was professed in those other Dhammas that they wanted to be part of Buddhism. And so they did. That was when they began to establish the Buddha as one Buddha among endless Buddhas going back into the endless past and forward into the eons into the future, and other mystical and magical practices that the Buddha had stripped away purposely in defense of an authentic Dhamma. And even the idea of Buddhas extending back to the past and to the future gets into this whole notion of past lives. We talked a little bit about that last night. The Buddha mentioned past lives, but he never presented knowledge of past lives as a requisite for awakening. In fact, he cautioned against putting too much emphasis on that. It's often presented that psychic powers are an example, meaning, and psychic powers, including recognition of past lives, is a requisite for awakening. When the Buddha talked about that, he would mention that as an aspect of developing awakening that was secondary and inferior to awakening. And he often talked of he used examples of people that had developed so-called psychic powers that had no understanding of the Dhamma and continued to create pain and suffering and confusion for themselves and other people. The clear explanation of all of this, of avoiding grasping after psychic powers or using the development of psychic powers to prove that you are somehow developing awakening, is included in the cautions that the Buddha gave to many seekers that were caught up in the great questions. We just did a series, and they're all recorded, of 4 classes that relate to strictly how the Buddha teaches, and it's included in the category on the website. But the Vajragota, the Malankaputta, the Anurata Sutta, and the Kula Sakaka Sutta are 4 suttas where the Buddha teaches what his Dhamma is, but he also teaches what it is not. He teaches what an authentic Dhamma is and what can corrupt his Dhamma. And those are getting into, those suttas relate to the great questions of humanity. Is the universe finite or infinite? Does the soul migrate from one life to the next or not? And ultimately he gets to the questions such as, who was I in the past? Where am I going? What will I be in the future? Those are speaking about past lives and future lives, aren't they? And the Buddha consistently cautioned against even the consideration, getting lost in that, the notion of trying to establish yourself through past lives or future lives. He said, don't do it, basically. Don't get lost in that. Focus on the Dhamma. Focus on what's occurring right here and right now. Because what an understanding of the Buddha's Dhamma is that it is the quality of our mind in this present moment that will conduce us towards awakening, not whatever baggage we're dragging around with us. Because a clear understanding of what the Buddha is teaching is that the past and the future have no bearing on what's occurring right now, save for karma. But a clear understanding of how the Buddha used karma, which was similar to how he used the notion of past lives, was to speak to a common concept and common words of the time, but using those concepts and words in a completely contradictory manner to show the difference between what he was teaching and what others were espousing. So let me continue. The Buddha continues, however, Kassapa, when counterfeit dhammas arise in the world, there is diminishing and disappearance of the authentic Dhamma. I will give you a metaphor. There is no diminishing in the value or even the disappearance of gold as long as a counterfeit gold has not arisen in the world. But there is the diminishing and ultimately the disappearance of gold when a counterfeit of gold has arisen in the world. Again, it's a metaphor. If you stretch the metaphor too far, you kind of lose it. Of course, gold has always been here. It's never disappeared. But the metaphor points to a few things. Gold is it takes a concerted effort to find. And once it's found, it needs to be preserved in a pure way. The Dhamma is like that. It takes an effort to discover the gold, or the common word is the heartwood of the Dhamma. And of course, the heartwood, when the Buddha is talking about the heartwood, he's always referring to the Eightfold Path. It takes time to discover it. And when we start introducing other things, just as if we started introducing other metals to gold, we're going to diminish the value of the gold, aren't we? If we start introducing other things to the Dhamma, we diminish and may ultimately cause the Dhamma to disappear. So it's a useful metaphor. The Buddha continues, in this same manner, there is diminishing and ultimately the disappearance of the authentic Dhamma when a counterfeit of the authentic Dhamma has arisen in the world. One of the best examples of that is where the Buddha was born. You could say the birthplace of the Buddha's Dhamma. I won't say Buddhism because that's happened all over the world. The birthplace of the Buddha's Dhamma. In the birthplace of the Buddha's Dhamma completely disappeared for many, many years. And I would say that it has completely disappeared. In other words, it's very, very hard, as far as I know. Again, I'm just going by what I've learned. I haven't traveled all over northern India. But for what I understand, the Buddhism that is being reintroduced to northern India, again, has more akin to modern Buddhism and the way it's developed, which itself has more akin to the Vedas and the Upanishads, which the Buddha rejected. And that's beyond the scope of this talk. But when you look at the magical and mystical practices, or the mind-only practices that is prevalent in modern Buddhism, including the influence of the Bodhisattva ideal, it's very plain that modern Buddhism has more in common with the Vedas than what the Buddha actually taught. The Buddha continues, it's not the earth element that makes the authentic Dhamma disappear. So the earth element the Buddha is talking about it's not the earth element is us human beings. And so the Buddha is saying it's not a general problem with human beings that causes the authentic Dhamma to disappear. It's not the water element or the fire element or the wind element that makes the authentic Dhamma disappear. Again, he's pointing out to what composes a human being. Sit down, Bodes, we're almost done. The Buddha is, my words here, the Buddha is simply stating that it is not something inherent and unavoidable in the world that causes the disappearance of the authentic Dhamma. Rather, it is continued ignorance that supports the strategies used to continue ignorance or to ignore this initial ignorance. And that initial ignorance is what the Buddha awakened to. Dependent origination states that from ignorance to 12 observable causative links, in the Buddha's words, all manner of confusion, deluded thinking, and suffering arises. And it's a very specific ignorance. It's ignorance of Four Noble Truths. And so relating that to the sutta, any teaching that diminishes in importance or dismisses outright the Four Noble Truths, including the Eightfold Path, is a counterfeit Dhamma. And it really is that clear. So it's not, some people, in fact, I would say many modern Buddhists would take great offense at what I just said and what the Buddha teaches, except that's what he's alluding to in this important teaching to one of the senior monks, to Mahakassapa, that we as Dhamma practitioners, we need to recognize and support, and by support, I'm also talking about defending an authentic Dhamma if we want to practice it within ourselves, but also if we want it to continue to be preserved in the world. We have a great responsibility, and I would say a grave responsibility, to keep it pure. Lay down, Bodes. Almost done. Sometimes Bodes doesn't have the greatest Kashanti, but we're getting there. Lay down. Come on, puppy. Almost done here. The Buddha continues. It is foolish people who arise within the Sangha who cause the authentic Dhamma to disappear. The authentic Dhamma doesn't disappear the way a boat sinks all at once. In other words, it takes time, it takes a concerted effort against the Dhamma, rooted in ignorance of Four Noble Truths, that eventually will cause the Dhamma to disappear, just like it did in northern India. And I would say to a great extent, it's very, very difficult to find an authentic Dhamma today. To me, that's unfortunate. I spent many, many years, I should probably put a number on that, maybe 15 or 20 years, I'll think more about that and put a more accurate number, engaged in Buddhism, in modern Buddhism, becoming more and more confused and frustrated and blaming myself that I just wasn't advanced enough to grasp these kind of wild concepts and vividly imaginative practices. There was something wrong with me. The problem was, what was wrong was that nobody in all that time ever taught me the Dhamma the way the Buddha teaches the Dhamma. And I studied with some of the most foremost teachers then and still who continue to teach today, or their lineages are still established and they continue to teach from that dogmatic foundation, meaning a Dhamma that does not have any foundation, as opposed to what the Buddha taught, which does. And I need to be clear, because I'll get some emails about this and angry comments. I'm not putting down what has developed, although it sure sounds like it. What I'm doing is defending the Buddha's Dhamma the way he defended it, meaning pointing out continually the difference between what he taught and what other people teaches. That comes up even in classes that I spend too much time doing that, and some people find that confusing. But honestly, I find it disappointing that as a Dhamma teacher that I need to do that. But I understand that disappointment is part of the First Noble Truth. Dukkha occurs. And it occurs because of the nature of ignorance arising in the world. So again, getting back to the sutta, and I'll just reread that again. It is foolish people who arise within the Sangha who causes the authentic Dhamma to disappear. The authentic Dhamma doesn't disappear. The way a boat sinks all at once. There are 5 unskillful qualities that increase confusion and lead to the disappearance of my authentic Dhamma. Number 1, disrespect and indifference to the teacher. Now, when you find and that indifference is one of the hindrances that the Buddha talks about, and that's very common. Indifference to the teacher and his Dhamma, and to a well-focused Sangha, will lead to the desire to embellish the Dhamma in some way, to incorporate other practices. Whenever that's there within the framework of the Dhamma, it has to be because of a disrespect and indifference to the teacher. To me, it is completely disrespectful to an awakened human being and his Dhamma to diminish it in any way. And so, respecting the teacher and respecting the Dhamma is an aspect of developing the Eightfold Path, an aspect of each aspect of the Eightfold Path, because that's what the Buddha taught. If we want to practice something else other than what an awakened human being teaches, that's fine. But we can see here in this sutta, but also just anecdotally look around at what's occurred, that the Buddha's Dhamma does need a strong defense, and that defense rests in having an actual experience of the Dhamma and then keeping the Dhamma pure. And of course, we're free to do anything that we want to do about that. We can consider ourselves Dhamma practitioners who are so open-minded that will include everything else. But there's a good saying that relates to that. It's good to have an open mind, but not so open that your brains fall out. The Buddha consistently taught a very specific, and I would say very narrowly focused Dhamma for 45 years for just this reason, to keep us focused, so that we can recognize. And there's some really brilliant comments on wrong view and right view last night, so that we can recognize wrong view and enter and remain in right view, just how the Buddha taught the ultimate expression of refined mindfulness, to understand that. The Buddha continues with these 5 unskillful qualities. Number 2, disrespect and indifference to the Dhamma. Now, again, let's put ourselves back 2,600 years ago. These are very simple and direct instructions that an awakened human being taught to remain authentic to his Dhamma. And yet you can look at each and every one of these, and these unskillful qualities are much more prevalent in modern Buddhism than the skillful qualities that he'll allude to in just a few moments. Disrespect and indifference to the Sangha. What could be more disrespectful to something called a Sangha or a Buddha Sangha than to cause counterfeit teachings to arise within the Sangha? Again, what could be more disrespectful or indifferent? Number 4, disrespect and indifference for the training. The Dhamma takes a certain amount of discipline. That's the root of the word disciple. There's nothing wrong with that. It takes a certain amount of discipline, but not an inhuman amount. Anybody can incorporate the discipline necessary to develop the Dhamma. But if we are indifferent or disrespect the discipline, which you could really simmer that down to right effort, when we start taking license with that, we are disrespectful and indifferent to the training. The Buddha cautioned against that. And then finally, disrespect and indifference for concentration. The Buddha taught shamatha vipassana meditation for one reason. I gave a couple of talks last week on this, and I've been doing that for many years now. And he taught meditation to deepen concentration for one reason: to support the refined mindfulness necessary to hold in mind all 8 factors of the Eightfold Path, and a clear study of the Buddha's teachings, beginning with how he taught people to meditate, which was the initial part of the 4 foundations of mindfulness, and the related teachings such as the Yuganada Sutta and the other suttas on the importance of practicing shamatha, quieting the mind, developing a tranquil mind, and vipassana, gaining insight into the 3 marks of existence in tandem, that any useful meditation practice must have those 2 components. The Buddha didn't teach meditation as contemplation. He didn't teach it as visualization. He taught it very specifically, and that is the only meditation method that the Buddha ever taught. Of course, there's an infinite number of things called meditation, including very foolish aspects such as walking meditation as a substitute for sitting meditation. It's good to be mindful when we're walking and maybe even incorporate mindfulness of our breath. But we should be very clear that those practices are not, there's no substitute for sitting meditation, although people that have a great aversion to meditation will incorporate those, or even other practices within our meditation, such as counting or using anything other than the 4 foundations of mindfulness. Become mindful of the breath in the body, the first foundation of mindfulness, as a meditation practice. So doing anything other than that is disrespect or indifference for concentration, because we're not going to develop concentration. These are all fundamental aspects that we have to recognize and abandon or avoid if we're going to develop an authentic, not a counterfeit Dhamma practice. The Buddha continues, friends, there are these 5 qualities to develop and to maintain stability, clarity, and continued establishment of my Dhamma, of my authentic Dhamma. In other words, if they're not done, the Buddha is stating that his Dhamma won't continue unless these 5 skillful qualities are incorporated. Number 1, respect and deference, not indifference, deference for the teacher. When you find a teacher who has actually studied what the Buddha taught and is now teaching that, have respect and have deference for that teacher. That doesn't mean to follow that teacher blindly, but it means to listen to what that teacher is saying. Conversely, if you're relying on a teacher who hasn't studied the actual teachings of the Buddha as preserved in the Sutta Pitaka, nowhere else, and actually has incorporated the Buddha's Dhamma within their own practice, how could they possibly teach a Buddha's Dhamma? They can certainly teach something else and teach within whatever lineage they may be a part of, but they're simply not teaching what a Buddha taught. Respect and deference for the teacher. Number 2, respect and deference for the Dhamma. If you want to learn a Buddha's Dhamma, you have to have respect for it and deference towards it. Very, very clear and direct, and almost too simple for some people to even accept. In other words, well, of course I'm doing that while you're chanting away or visualizing yourself or burning candles to deities. Again, I'm not putting those down, but those are not something that the Buddha taught. But because other people do that, and it may be what your teacher taught you to do, you think you're giving deference to the Dhamma by continuing that. That is why it's so important to actually study what the Buddha taught, no matter what you think you may be studying. And I'm talking about if you're engaged in other practices, only if you want to learn what an awakened human being taught. If you're comfortable and you believe that your Dharma practice is delivering what you hope it would deliver, that's fine. Continue to practice it and support that, and support the teachers that do that. Excuse me. But if you find something lacking or something corrupt in your Dharma practice, such as teachers that engage, and I'll give a longer talk on this, but this is something that needs to be addressed, such as teachers that engage in sexually predatory behaviors or are expressing ongoing addiction, meaning active addiction within themselves. These are teachers that need to be looked at and recognized that they're not teaching an authentic Dhamma. They're teaching a counterfeit Dhamma, and so their lineage is based on a counterfeit Dhamma. It's surprising to me that most of the more well-known lineages today have within their lineage these corrupt teachers, these sexual predators, these active drug addicts and alcoholics. And I'm not putting that down. I'm a drug addict and an alcoholic, but I recovered. And I put that behind me, and I used the principles of the Dhamma to assist and support my recovery. And what I'm saying is that if you're engaged in aberrant behavior, you obviously haven't developed what an awakened human being taught. And that, to me, that taints the whole lineage, and it should give rise to question: are you practicing an authentic Dhamma or a counterfeit Dhamma? And maybe then you will not want to support these teachers or their Dhamma with your money or your association. And again, we just need to make wise choices about what we're doing. Respect and deference for the Sangha, respect and deference for the training, meaning the rules of the Sangha, whether you're a monk or a nun or a lay person. And again, that it's made very clear when we understand what right effort is. And respect and deference to concentration. The most important aspect of the Buddha's Dhamma is to develop a well-concentrated mind. The Buddha continues, friends, these are 5 qualities to develop and maintain stability, clarity, and continued establishment of my authentic Dhamma. That's the end of that sutta. And again, a very clear and direct teachings on how to maintain an authentic Dhamma, if we're inclined to do that. And so those that have listened to me over the years and come to my classes know that that is a primary focus of what I teach, because I learned it from reading how the Buddha teaches. He would continually teach suttas similar to this to continually keep our minds focused on the heartwood of the Dhamma and not get distracted by what our friends and our associates and other practices or practitioners are including in calling it Buddhism. So even during the Buddha's time, there was a compulsive need within the Sangha to incorporate other teachings. And again, there's many, many stories about that. And there's many stories, such as the 4 that I just taught about how the Buddha teaches, that the effort that's necessary for both a teacher and a practitioner, if they're going to teach or practice an authentic Dhamma, it does take concerted effort. It does take discernment. It does take the courage to recognize and declare it's this and it's not that. This is just following how a Buddha teaches. If we're not interested in a Buddha's Dhamma, then this should be of no consequence, and it really shouldn't even concern anyone, because you have your own way of doing this, which is usually either an all-inclusive way or a restricted way, but towards a lineage that was established long after the Buddha's passing, such as the mind-only schools. But you could really look at most modern Buddhist schools. You could trace them back to that separation formed by the Mahasangikas, which would eventually, but rather quickly over the series of the next 300 or 400 years, lead to the emergence of Mahayana Buddhism. Again, I'm not putting it down, but just to be clear, it is something that is quite different than what an awakened human being taught. That's what the Buddha spent 45 years of his life teaching, what it is and what it isn't. And as a Dhamma practitioner who has found great clarity and great usefulness and great skillfulness in the application, it's why I teach how I teach. So thank you for listening. There'll be another talk next Wednesday, and I hope you join me. If you find benefit from this talk, please consider a donation at becoming-buddha.com. Thank you. Peace.